Welcome to a new episode of Mystic-Skeptic Radio. On today's show, we have one of the many influencers we've been able to get to show up, and we've had a range of different people. And, I can be accused of being an Israel sympathizer or Zionist infiltrator, but the one thing that I haven't seen from the progressive community is allowing for people who have nuanced approach from Israeli Zionists or just a Jewish perspective on any platform. So when October 7 happened, all you would hear was people that already agreed with almost like pro-Hamas or pro-extreme Palestinian resistance groups, and that's it. So it was polarized. It was the super Zionist, ultra, supporters of Bibi, and the super pro-Palestinian anti-Zionist Jews, and that's it. But you never heard from people who had their own perspectives. So the first guest that we had was the one we're doing shows with that is almost like he calls himself a loyalist, and we can go into the different terms as an Israeli. But we had in the past Moshe Shertov, who's a peace activist, and he showed us how different forms of Zionism, and there's people who are working to bring peace with the Palestinians and Arab Israelis that are trying to work with other groups. So on this show, we have Omri, and I'm really bad with last names. Can you pronounce your last name for me?
It's Hananya for Americans and Hananya for Israelis.
Okay, I don't see the difference, but tell us about.
It's the
Okay, so he called himself the Angry Prophet, and it's a lot of chutzpah to claim a prophetic role. So, as a Nabi, tell us what is your role in Instagram and TikTok, and what are you trying to convey?
what my role is a big question. I think that the role that I try to play is to bring the conversations that Israelis are actually having, but like amongst themselves onto like any kind of platform. And that swings both ways, right? That swings towards the have you seen this ridiculous thing that Candace Owens said, and why is it ridiculous, and why is it both wrong, and how we can make fun of it? But then also did you fucking see what Bibi or Ben Gvir said last week, and all that? The role that I try to play is not one of a moderate per se, because I do probably hold some opinions that people would like very strongly disagree with either way, but I would classify it more as a completionist in terms that anyone that you see on social media has a more nuanced perspective than they're willing to let on. I genuinely believe that. Because you can't get as much into like a 90 to 3 minute second clip. You can't get as much into like a 90-second or a 3 minute clip as you actually believe in. So people choose very small roles, right? As they choose like I'm going to be the pro-Israel man on the street guy, I'm going to be the guy who does pro-Israel characters. And I think that's a very narrow perspective to have, and not one that I hold or feel comfortable conveying. So the approach that I have is a more holistic approach where I just tell you everything that I think of instead of pigeonholing myself into pro-Israel Zionist 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe all the same things as the other 10 Zionist influencers.
But with the anti-Semitism approach that the Trump administration and the Netanyahu regime have pushed for, can you even have a nuanced approach? Because now they're saying that if you don't support Israel, they're going to be checking your comments and stuff like that. And their definition of supporting Israel seems to be anything they do is wonderful versus what some of us as Jews could say, hey, wait a second, doesn't fit my political perspective, or that doesn't fit my understanding of the Bible and Talmudic approach to human rights or human sanctity. So, are you ever worried that something you say that is critical of your previous, government can be misconstrued, and then you can be banned from returning to where you were born?
I will honestly say that that has never crossed my mind. And until you said that, that thought has never crossed my mind. And I'll tell you more than that. I don't believe in self-censorship, and I don't believe in censorship by the government. If they want to put me in jail for calling a spade, then I guess that's what will happen, right? I am not I am more concerned about the state of moral decay in the country than I am about some idiot reading my comment and reporting me to the FBI.
And that goes also for Israel or just the US?
What do you mean, does that go for Israel?
You mentioned re being reported to the FBI, but what about being reported to whatever agency they're using to judge anti-Semitic comments or anti-Israel comments in Israel as well?
I really think that if I get pinned as an anti-Semite, then the battle is so far lost that we have nothing else to worry about. Like, I really, really like if they bar me from entering Israel because I made comments against Bibi, even though I was born and raised in Israel, I served in the army, I have received death threats and been attacked on the street for supporting Israel. If they label me an anti-Semite for calling out Bibi, then I feel comfortable saying that the Zionist dream, as I know it, is dead, and there is not much for me to return to anyway. And I hope that by the time that that happens, then my family leaves.
Okay, well, that's interesting because we were talking about Bernie Sanders before the show started, and I had an activist who now has gone pretty far deep in craziness, and we were talking about the Israel problem of Bernie, having him lived in a kibbutz and being critical of the state of Israel and blocking uh, what they call aid, but is actually military spending for the state of Israel way before October 7th and the Gaza assault. And I was telling him, I contacted the Jewish organization Canary Mission, and I asked them, is Ilhan Omar and Bernie Sanders on your list of the worst anti-Semites that ever existed? And they weren't. And it seemed like at that time, Canary Mission was being careful not to alienate anybody from the left who was Jewish by condemning people. But then I had a rabbi who was saying that Bernie Sanders was a Nazi because he was a socialist and he wouldn't let it go. So, for those in our audience that haven't heard your perspective, tell us what are the criticisms that you have against the current administration of the state of Israel. And I was moved by your presentation on Instagram because to me it felt like an honest approach that just like Omri and I were talking before the show, within the progressive left or people that listen to this broadcast, you have this purity test that you have to be completely against even the Zionist idea, or now you're not good enough, and it's a lot to ask for someone to condemn something completely, just like they don't want people to condemn the resistance or whatever they want to call from the Palestinian side. So when you have someone who believes in the Jewish definition of Zionism, which is independence and the ability to live free in the Holy Land, what are the nuances that you have based on the current approach of the Zionist nation and what they're doing?
I think that first, there's a lot of subdivisions in that question, right? Because there's there's criticism of the administration, and there's criticism of Netanyahu, and there's criticism from the perspective of I guess at like center right Israeli, and there's criticism from the point of view of an Israeli living abroad, and there's like so there's a lot compiled in that. So I guess if I had to, my biggest problem with Netanyahu is the fact because there's two and they're really competing. They're really head to head. The first one is the fact that October 7th happened is a failure in leadership, hands down, regardless of anything else. Regardless of anything else that happened, the fact that it happened on your watch, you've been prime minister with the exception of 1 year. You've been prime minister for what was it since 2008, right? So 17 years out of the past 18 years, and forgive me if I did the math wrong in my head, you've been prime minister. That means that what happens is your responsibility. The same way that you're responsible for the economy, you're responsible for your citizens' safety. Some would say that that is far more important, actually. So, like, number one, you and your administration, every single one of the administrations that you've had, and that includes the people that you appointed to head the military and the people that you appointed to head the police and the people that were in charge of making sure that the on-call brigades in those like surrounding kibbutzes were well stocked and well prepared and well trained. Though all of those things failed on October 7th, the system that was built up by the Netanyahu administration since 2008 failed at like a fundamental, crucial level. That is not something that I'm willing to accept from my prime minister. That has nothing to do with the way he responded to the war, but the fact that it was allowed to happen is already, in and of itself, a system failure on the level that I think you should not be prime minister anymore. You put my best friend as prime minister for 20 years, and then October 7th happened, and I will tell him that he should not be prime minister anymore. It has nothing to do with anything else you did. That, in and of itself, is a catastrophic failure, right? So that's one. That's one thing. That's a criticism that I have of Netanyahu and the administration and everything that happened. And then the second part is um, just the divide and conquer approach of Israeli society. He has the Israeli society has fractures, and it always has. It's a nation of immigrants that came from very like diverse cultures and at very diverse periods of time. And there's wealth disparities, and there's cultural differences, and there's very genuine grievances that stem from like the 50s and 60s of the more like the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews, and all of that is true. But the fact that he has spent again the past essentially 20 years not attempting to bring us together, but actually working to divide us even further in order so that he can stay in office, it's also not something that I'm willing to accept from my prime minister. Your job as a leader is to lead us. That means all of us. That means that you don't call people who disagree with you traitors. That means that you don't call the media I don't know. I don't even know what names he calls them now. Awutzat Ela is what I remember specifically. Like he calls the media poison, or if he doesn't call it, his constituents do, and he doesn't mind because it helps them. You know, there's the famous video from 2015 where he was calling his calling his supporters to the polls like threatening with like, oh, the left wing foundations are bringing the Arabs to the polls in droves. Like we got to counter it. Like, no, excuse me, this is democracy, right? If those Arabs are citizens of the state of Israel, so they should be allowed to vote, and uh, um, any organization that facilitates that is a good organization, regardless of if they vote for what I agree with or not. Um, they are helping to further democracy, right? So my second problem with them, which again has nothing to do with the what's going on in Gaza, is the fact that he's dividing us, the fact that he's attempting to undermine democracy by attacking the media and reorganizing the courts in a way that suits him. And that's not even to say that the courts don't need to be reformed, but and I don't remember all of the exact specifics of this of the way that he proposes to reform it, but it essentially guarantees that the Supreme Court can't strike down laws passed by the government, which essentially nullifies the separation of authorities, right? My problem with him is that he's an undemocratic man who presided over the biggest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And if you want to tell me that that criticism is anti-Semitic, I will laugh in your face, even if you're from the Israeli Secret Service and you're like threatening to not let me into the country. Like, please tell me how that's anti-Semitic. At no point did I say anything that attacked any Jews, except specifically the ones that are in charge and the ones that are, overseeing our slaughter and our slow descent into fascism.
Well, speaking of slow descent to fascism, what is your stance with him propping up people like Smotrich and others who said very horrible and irresponsible things about the Gazans, condemning all of them, saying that they don't deserve to live and things like that, and him using biblical language about Amalek also in a irresponsible way to push forward the assault on Gaza? Couldn't he just be very tactical and very specific on them fighting the terrorists? Why did they have to rally people with such hateful rhetoric?
This is this is a slightly more complicated question because to answer the first part of your question, um, how do I feel about him propping up Smotrich and Ben-Gvir? Bad. I feel bad about that. I don't like it. I've seen the things that they say, and I don't think they're productive. In the same way that calling for the like dissolution of Israel completely is not productive, right? But the the thing that Americans don't get is that, well, the reason there's so much hate in the way that we speak about it is because there's a lot of hate inside of us on both sides. Like like it's not a thing that doesn't exist, and there is a problem when you weaponize that and you use that in order to appeal to people's worst instincts. But the hate is there and it's there for a reason. And failing to address it will not make it go away. The only way to make it go away is to like move on as a people and put enough distance between us and the things that happen so that other things are allowed to happen. Like we like never forgive, never forget for the Holocaust, but we have a completely normal relationship with Germany, not even 100 years, like not even 30 years after that, we already had a relationship with Germany. So The thing with Germany is though is that they were all like there was a huge process of de-radicalization in there, and that's something that is deeply needed in the Gaza Strip and in a less extreme way also in Israeli society. Like the hate is there because we've been murdering each other for 100 years. Of course, we're gonna hate each other. Like, yeah, and of course, you're gonna have people that are gonna attempt to appeal to that hate in order to will get what they want, which is a very militant and I would say narrow interpretation of uh, Zionism. Uh, but I still hope that there is a future where we can move forward and, not murder each other every 5 years or so.
Are you familiar with some of the wars in the Eastern Bloc, like Bosnia?
Not as intimately as I would need to be to actually make like any substantial comments on them. Like I'm a child of the 2000s. I wasn't around for them. And it's point blank, I have not done the research into them, so I do not feel comfortable commenting on them. But if you want to use them as an example, I can follow what you're saying.
I just have a basic understanding, but I have a friend that is from over there, and he said that Germany, the US, and another country had to get involved and split the three different groups that were warring against each other. And my fear, and I brought this to other guests, is that Israel is creating the situation, with so many fronts and so many wars going on at the same time, with brain drain and economic issues, that it's becoming to the boiling point where is it going to be able to survive without becoming a militarized area? And then there's all kinds of proxies and things going on. I know that during the Gaza assault there was intelligence from the French, the British, and the Americans. So it's almost like they're being used as pawns for whatever Western projects they have going on in the Middle East. So do you feel that it's getting to the point where you almost need like an act of God or some type of other group to come in and try to create a something that is sustainable? I know there's been proposals to have Saudi Arabia take over Gaza, or some type of American, troops on the ground. Do you think that it's ever going to get to that point because it is so chaotic and has been going on for so long?
Are you talking specifically about like Gaza and the West Bank, or what are you specifically Gaza and the West Bank?
Correct.
I here's the thing. I don't like the idea of bringing an external force to keep the peace. Even if it's like the UN, they're useless. But based mainly on the idea that that harms the one of the core aspects of Zionism, which is sovereignty, right? Um, I don't think we are as close to that as you might believe. But I mean, there is the current proposal for the strip post the war is already kind of like a multinational program where each section is kind of controlled by a different country, and their troops. And I don't remember the exact order. There's a few of them in there. I honestly don't see that going well. I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I don't believe that you're going to convince the populations of, I think it's like five different countries, that it is in their benefit in the long term to have soldiers almost permanently stationed there, especially as we're like moving into a world or have been in a world of like deep financial instability. Like Americans are already so sick of sending money to the Middle East. And you can like, it's like you said earlier with Bernie, it's not giving money to the Middle East, it's financial aid and they get the money back. But it doesn't matter at this point because people are so sick of watching or perceiving their money as being drained away into the Middle East. And that's just America as an example. You think the French are gonna spend money and French lives on some strip in the Middle East that none of them have ever seen, you think that that's not going to get repealed 4 years later when whatever president decided to send 20,000 troops into Gaza and 300 of them died? You think they're going to keep that, or you think they're going to pull it away and say, hey, we gave you 5 years of peace. You guys figure it out now. That has been the European approach to the Middle East since the death of the Ottoman Empire, essentially, right? That's like the British Mandate didn't work. It led to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It led to and the French mandate of the northern Levant is what led to like the conflicts inside Syria because they were just drawing lines on the map and not really understanding what they're doing. And yeah, this is on a smaller scale, but I don't see anything else happening. I see in that situation where like Gaza, the West Bank get like divided up amongst different countries, enough of those country soldiers get killed by one time it's Palestinian militants, and then another time they get mistaken for Palestinian militants and they get shot up by the IDF. I promise you that's going to happen. And then suddenly you have a case where all five of those countries want to pull out, and we're right back where we were October 6th, 2023, except now they're much more pissed off. Like that just I just don't see that working. The only thing that will work is population de-radicalization. And that, I'm not even saying this will 100% work. I'm saying that is the only thing that has a chance of working. Nothing is going to stop this conflict until Israelis and Palestinians don't want to kill each other anymore, or they're separated by so much land that it is impossible for them to kill each other anymore, or one of the sides is completely dead.
Well, finally, we get an honest person giving us based on their perspective. And you're the second Israeli veteran that we have on the show, and I'm sure people can criticize that the Druze army commander that we had in the last episode that I didn't go into his experience other than, hey, do you think that the IDF takes precautions with innocent civilians and stuff like that? We can get into your own experience if you feel comfortable serving, but what is your opinion on I don't even want to call it a war. I don't know if you noticed, I've been using the word assault instead of conflict or whatever when it comes down to Gaza. Whatever happened with Iran, I would call it a ridiculous preemptive strike, just like Iraq. Um, what is your perspective on that? Because everybody else I've had on the show says that it was an imminent threat, that them having an atomic bomb is the worst thing that can happen. What would be your stance on this very silly and kind of back and forth interaction between Iran and the US, and that a lot of people feel it was provoked by Israel?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm going to disagree with both sides of that because I do believe that on the one hand, I very much believe that the threat of imminent nuclear threat, one of two things happened here. Either they lied to us a year ago or they're lying to us now. Because a year ago, when we went on the first Iran war, they said we knocked their nuclear capabilities back to the Stone Age or whatever. We blew up their things and we blew up that and we knocked it back like a decade or 5 years or whatever. And then within a year, they're right back where we were? No. Either they lied to us then or they're lying to us now. On the other hand, I don't believe that this. I believe that the war between Israel and Iran has been going on since well before October 7th, 2023, and it was not started by Israel. Iran has been funding proxy organizations on Israel's border for decades. They have been funding Hezbollah and Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and Fatah, like everything goes through them. I believe that if a country funds an act of war against you, that is an act of war against you. I think we've been well within our rights to attack in Iran since October 7th. It was an Iranian plan. Don't let anyone tell you any different. They were upset with Yahya Sinwar because they actually wanted to wait a couple years until Hezbollah was more established so they can surround us with their quote unquote ring of fire, right? But Yahya Sinwar was getting like stirrings that the public in Gaza might turn on him, so he launched the attack early, and that's why we were able to like more or less stop it. But I will not say that Israel has no right to go to war with Iran. Like, if you ask me my perspective, this war has been in the works since before I was born. I remember driving to school, like in the back of my dad's car, and hearing in Farsi Ahmadinejad promising the end of the Zionist entity, and then having it like in translated into Hebrew, like what he was saying. Like, don't tell me we can't start a war with these people. They started a war with us. They made October 7th happen. So I disagree with both sides of that. I don't think that the war is silly, but I also don't think that the reason for it is truthful.
And what about the idea that the US will not get involved in anything unless they can benefit from it? So do you think that the five other reasons that they've shared, such as trying to get at China, trying to steal the oil, trying to, they were talking about this a lot during Iraq War, the strong man argument that if you take down an oppressive regime in the Middle East, you'll get everybody else to come down and not be so reactive, that they try to kill Trump, that not only are they supporting proxies, but they are, causing a lot of financial issues with the petrodollar, or the Saudis need more hegemony in the Middle East, or Israel needs more hegemony in the Middle East. What about all those other reasons? Do you think that they all play a role in the conflict?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think that anyone at this point believes that if you take down an oppressive regime, everyone just chills out and goes, "Whoa, we don't want to rock the boat." What happens is like Iraq and Syria, like you get so much infighting that they're no longer effective externally. It's like a very cruel war strategy for the people that live in those countries. But I mean, it is effective. That is like it's not moral, but it is effective. I think that I think that saying, "Oh, if we take down the regime, we'll get quiet." I think that's a true statement just because, yeah, the people in there are just going to fight each other for control for the next 15 years, and whoever emerges from it is going to hate you even more than the last guy did. But it will like bring you peace for a short amount of time. It's a cruel, effective short-term strategy that leads to a lot of suffering and death. And that's just kind of what the Middle East has been for the past few centuries. Um, those other things, like, I mean, they're true. Like the Russia-Iran-China alliance is a threat to. Here's the thing. People don't like the American hegemony. I do. I think it's better than the alternative. I really do. I really think that a world that is on as a whole, led by America is better than one led by Russia or China. I think that America, while it fails to while it often fails to live up to the values that it was founded to uphold, at least it has those goddamn values to fall back on. Like Russia just wants control. They just want money. And you can say that America is exactly like that, but they have also done a lot of good. Coming from like an Israeli perspective, yeah, I would not be alive without the American hegemony, right? So I have a vested interest in it. And I don't mean like that we would like all of my grandparents would have just died in the Holocaust. Like I don't mean that Israel would have like not existed without America. I mean that the Jewish people would not exist without the Western forces. Because when you look back on it, Russia wanted to kill all its Jews too, or at least assimilate them to the point where they were not Jews anymore. China and its view of like a grand, like unified communist society, like their values infringe on some of the things that I hold most sacred, like freedom of speech and freedom of expression and individuality. Like that you don't get that in China, and the ability to criticize your government. Like I very much believe that yes, this is a BRICS, right? Is a counter to NATO, and yeah, one of them is going to win out at the end, and I'm rooting for NATO and the US because they're the ones who are, you know, didn't try to kill all the Jews 100 years ago.
Well, and more recently, Poland after the Holocaust, it, what is it, exiled or deported, I think it was 10,000 Jews that survived the Holocaust, to Israel as it was developing. So there's a history of European countries not protecting the Jews, even after the Shoah and everything they've done. And then the same could be said about different places in the Middle East. So why making content in relation to anti-Semitism do you think is the most important at this time? A lot of people criticize the Jewish community for being obsessed with survival and combating hatred. What about inspiring Jews to be a light unto the nations or making a difference? Do you think it goes hand in hand, or do we just need to eradicate anti-Semitism so we can have a more, diverse and understanding community?
I think that I think right now that we feel like an animal, like a cornered animal, right? That's in Israel, in the US, that's kind of our vibe right now. Because everywhere we go, people assault us, whether verbally or physically or politically, whatever. There are a lot of people who are against us right now. You can't, you know, be a light onto the nations when the nations are attacking you. The I made a video about this a while ago, and it's a response to the Neturei Karta argument that Israel should not have been founded until the Messiah came. And the other part of the promises that the Jewish people made to the world, like be a light unto the nations, is conditioned by three promises that the outside world was supposed to promise Jews. I do not remember all three off the top of my head, but one of them was we're not going to persecute you. I very much believe that if people want, well, clearly right now, no one outside of the Jewish community wants to take note from the Jewish community. And that's, I believe, stupid because we do a lot of things very correctly. But no one in the Jewish community that I know has any interest in teaching their Gentile friends, like about philosophy or morals or whatever it is that you want to call it, because those people are not showing up for us, right? It goes from the societal implication to the like private implication, right? I am not going to help someone who persecutes me. And that goes for me as a person, and that goes for me as a Jewish community, right? When we don't have to completely eradicate anti-Semitism for that to be the case. Obviously, like it never went anywhere after World War II. It just kind of was buried kind of deep for a couple of generations. And in that time we shined. We really did. Same that we did in 1300 and 1400 Spain under the golden age of Islamic, right? Even though we were dhimmis, that time didn't have complete equality for the Jews, but it did have a freedom from immediate persecution that allowed us to thrive. No one creates art when they can't afford rent. They focus on getting enough money to not be homeless anymore. And it goes the same way with it's like the Maslow pyramid of needs. I need to feel safe before I can be intellectually stimulated.
Okay, so what about people got tired of the woke mentality of microaggressions and sensitivity to people's pronouns and the way they identify themselves and stuff like that. Do you feel that people have some type of fatigue with Jews crying out wolf or feeling slighted at every turn? Because we were talking about how the Trump administration decided to make the Jewish community the protected ethnic group, and they used to complain, especially libertarians and conservatives, about the African Americans, LGBTQ, and others being the token favorites of the Democrats. Do you think that it's going to backfire, like we've been saying, this AI or some type of agency checking your Facebook post and trying to condemn people, kind of like in England, if you make the wrong tweet? Do you think that that is not the right approach versus what you're doing, where you're actually making arguments, using logic, using history to educate people?
Look, I don't believe those two things are mutually exclusive at all. I think that those things go very much hand in hand together because those two approaches work for very different sections of the population. Do I think that people should go to jail for a Facebook post? No, I don't. Do I believe in doxing those people and maybe they lose their jobs? I don't give a shit. They can, I don't care if they lose their jobs. If they said something incredibly callous and racist and offensive towards any group and their employer chooses that they don't align with their values and for that reason they shouldn't be employed in that place anymore, I'm not going to tell that employer to not do that, right? Um, those people will likely never be reached by my videos. The people that I am fighting for are reasonable. The people who comment 12 juice box emojis or $7,000 or just a picture of the Israeli flag with a blue swastika instead of a Star of David on every single one of my posts will not be reached by the arguments that I make until they are willing to listen to reason. And it is not my job to make them listen to reason. It is my job to present reason. It's a lead a horse to water type situation, right? I think that people are very tired of Jews claiming anti-Semitism, and I think those people are daft. I think those people are probably a little anti-Semitic themselves. I think those people are just sick of hearing about other people in general, regardless of who they are. And I, if I tell you that I experienced anti-Semitism and your response is, ugh, again with this shit, fuck you. As an individual, fuck you. Like, I don't know if I can swear on this show. I can't. Sorry. So,
I'll edit
as
it
an
on the radio, but the video is okay.
Okay. Um, so I'll try to reword that. If your response to me telling you that I have received anti-Semitic threats online or was assaulted on the street or that I see things and arguments that people are making and they make me feel uncomfortable and unsafe, uh, your response to that is ugh. This again? Um, man, I'm really trying to think of anything except F you, but that is really how I feel about those people. Like if someone tells you, if let's say that I was black and I told you that um someone said something racist towards me. In today's America, not even someone who's conservative would likely say like, ugh, whatever. If a black person told you that someone called them the N-word, we can all agree that that's racist and wrong, whether or not you're sick of hearing about it or not. And if you are sick of hearing about it, you probably just don't care even if it was worse. Like you're never gonna be a part of my like community, inner circle, whatever you want to call it, if you can't take legitimate cases of anti-Semitism seriously. That's not my problem. That's your problem.
Okay, I want to give you two examples. So there's an Israeli guy, a Jewish Israeli guy, and he goes to a coffee shop, and the barista has a shirt that says "Free Palestine," or it has, I hate that they'll take the same map of the Holy Land, and one group will claims it for themselves, and the other group claims it for themselves. So it's two competing
Yeah.
narratives. And the guy says, "Hey, I find that shirt offensive." And everybody turns against him and says, mind your own business. She has the right to wear whatever she wants. And he's like, oh, when someone wears from the river to the sea kind of thing, it makes me feel like the Jews are not allowed to survive or live there or something like that. Do you think that he was overreacting? Do you think that he's hypersensitive? Or do you think that he should just let it go? Everybody has their own claim. Why pick a fight with a barista and why, try to go viral with something like that?
Yeah, I think that if you find yourself at a point where you're filming yourself fighting a barista, you've lost the thread. You're not going to look good on that. Look, there's a couple levels to this. Um, On a practical level, no. Either get your coffee and leave, or just leave and don't give that coffee shop your money if you find the political views that they allow their employees to present openly to be that offensive. Don't buy there. That's perfectly fine with me. Also, you can later you can make a post on your like Jewish community group and say, "Hey, I saw this picture. I saw this um, phrase. This person said this thing. I'm not going to go there anymore. Make your own decision." That's great. That's fine. You should be smart enough to understand that if you take that publicly, no one's going to side with you for many reasons. One, crucially, you're attacking a service worker. That's never going to work out for you. Literally never, that's never going to work out for you. Two, yeah, people have a right to say things I vehemently disagree with. People have a right to have opinions that I consider vile. And as long as they don't take action to actively harm me or my safety, and that doesn't mean to be violent. They can also just like, even if they, if I walk around, I have a Star of David and Israeli map on my pendant. If I go and the barista picks a fight with me and like calls people's attention to it, then yes, that barista is making me unsafe actively because he doesn't know what someone else is going to do when they learn about it, right? But if they didn't do that, I can't say anything because they're as free as I am. And I cannot like what they choose to do with that freedom, but that their freedom guarantees mine. So I just kind of have to live with it. That's how I look at it.
So the other example, and I'm sure you've seen it, the recent verbal attack on two
It's
Israelis.
going to
They
be the
were,
restaurant thing, right?
yeah, so they were in Thailand, and the young ladies who were insulting them and calling them genociders, they were from Indonesia, or they were from somewhere else. They were European. Um, and so for those who are not aware, Ashkenazi, European-looking Jews are eating in a restaurant in Thailand, and the woman has a tattoo of the map of Israel, the way that Israelis paint it. And I remember going to a bookstore and seeing a map of Israel book, and Gaza and the West Bank weren't displayed. So it's assuming that the whole thing is Israel. So it is controversial for a lot of people, but I guess, like if you're gonna allow freedom of speech, I guess everybody gets to say whatever they believe in. And these two other women won't stop harassing them, insulting them, calling them from a fake country, calling them baby killers, assuming that they were in the military. They said they were because everybody has to, and they just won't let them eat. And as much as they try to avoid them, it just becomes harassment. Um, in a situation like that, you mentioned being afraid for how other people might react or your safety. Couldn't it just be like standing up for yourself and debating back, or getting the attention of the restaurant management that now has become an uncomfortable situation for the patrons? How would have you handled it? And try not to curse.
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, it's important to note that the end of that video is they just move away. They like kind of look at the person behind the counter and they go, "Do you want to go over there?" And they go, "Yeah, we want to go over there." Which is probably, I mean, it's a very effective way to do it. I think the key difference between these two examples is that, yeah, you have something that's passive versus you have active like harassment, right? So in that situation, I personally, I would stand my ground. I would not move away. I would also not pick a fight with them because I don't see that as an effective thing to do in that. If I sit down and someone wants to call me a baby killer, I go, all right, Bo, and I move on. If someone yells stuff at me, I will I think the order of actions that I would take would be to try to get the attention of the manager to see if he would kick them out because they're harassing other clientele. And I think that if you're a customer of an establishment and you're harassing another client for whatever it is that they're doing, as long as they're not actively harming you, then that business owner should be well within their right to kick them out, and they probably should. If they didn't do that, I would play Israeli music on my phone to spite them. Because if you want to harass me, go ahead. And I will say this is also different because honestly, in that video, it was two women and I wouldn't feel physically threatened. If it was two large, imposing men who were starting to yell stuff at me, I would have a different reaction, but it would likely not be to move away or run away. It would be to stand my ground.
And last question, as we're running out of time, How is it in the military back home when if you see somebody doing something inappropriate, disrespectful, or abusive towards captives or violating people's privacy, religious mores, or vandalizing their property? How does another person who has higher morality or values go about calling people out or how to keep people accountable because we keep being told that the Israelis go into people's houses and they wear people's underwear and they mistreat captives and they do all kinds of crazy stuff. Um, is there such a thing as a way to not allow for things to get out of hand and not be just carte blanche where people just do whatever they want in the midst of war and battle.
I think it's important to recognize, first of all, that there is not a carte blanche approach. Like if you take the example of like the this went very viral in the past week or so, the excuse me, the soldier in Lebanon who smashed the Jesus statue. He was sent to jail for that. He was sent to jail for that, and Israel replaced that statue. Does that happen every time? No. Should it? Probably. If there is, I believe that there are systems in place to hold those people accountable. And the place that we're failing is not in it's in the way we implement those things. I think that the way to handle this is we have to keep each other accountable. Like I was not in combat. I was injured very young in my service, nothing in combat, but I did not serve in combat, so I can't speak for the people who were, doing those arrests. But I can tell you that I have friends that have served in Gaza and in Lebanon, and after 30 days of not sleeping and not eating right, you might do something that you'd regret. And I have it on good authority from some of my friends who've been there that good people do that. Good people hold each other accountable. And I think this is a general statement for any system. Any system is only as good as and as moral as the people that make it. And if we manage to de-radicalize both sides, the threat of war would be much farther away, and those situations would not happen.
And for our video audience, last question. Um, how would you respond to someone that says, well, you're making a false equivalency. You cannot say that Hamas, Fatah, and Islamic Jihad are one form of extremism and they need to be de-radicalized. And now you're saying that the Israelis need to be de-radicalized? Are you talking about the settlers? Are you talking about gun-ho, t trigger-happy soldiers? Are you talking about the leadership making genocidal statements. What are you talking about de-radicalizing Israelis? Has it gotten to the point of them being as radical as terrorists and these so-called freedom fighters from the left perspective?
No, I don't think we're on the same level at all. I think that you can see that by the fact that I did not see a single person stand up for that soldier who smashed that Jesus statue. Not in English, not in Hebrew, not in any single post, any single thread. I did not see a single person make the comment that it is good that that happened, right? We are not on the same level at all. But like I said earlier, we have a fair amount of hate in us for good reasons. The fact that it is there for good reasons does not mean that it does not need to be dealt with. Hate is an emotion that consumes you. And I love Israel too much to let it be consumed by its hate. I want to see a future for Israel that steers us into the things that we love instead of away from the things that we hate. I believe that process is called de-radicalization.
Wonderful. Well, we want to thank you for your time. We appreciate your efforts. And can you tell us how do people can get a hold of your content online?
Yeah, you can get a hold of my content at The Angry Prophet on Instagram. I am also The Angry Prophet on TikTok. I do not post on TikTok a lot, so you should go on Instagram. I'm also a stand-up comedian. So if you want my comedy, that's Omri underscore Hananya underscore. I had to bifurcate those two accounts.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.